Hello, this is Wade Frazier. This is March 2nd, 2026, 11:37 a.m. Well, this post, unsurprisingly, will be about the latest current events in the world, Iran in particular. So, oil, it's the black gold of industrial economies. As Bucky Fuller said, if oil was priced at the benefit that humanity got from it, it would cost $1 million a barrel. Because 1 barrel of oil represents, put through machines, et cetera, it represents 10 years of man work, or even 11, as I've read. Yeah, so $1 million a barrel seems about right, as far as the benefit we get from it. In 1945, the U.S. State Department, in fact, Dean Acheson, who eventually rose through the ranks there, he called Saudi Arabia oil among world history's greatest material prizes. And that was just Saudi Arabia. So taken as a whole, Middle East oil, there's nothing else like it in world history as far as that material prize, especially for industrial economies. And the industrial powers quickly realized that. And so that's where all the world's good oil is there. Again, all along the shores of the ancient Tethys Ocean. Anoxic events formed all that oil, and that's where humanity gets most of its oil from. Winston Churchill, back in 1911, he ran the Navy at the time for the British. In fact, he watched the crews. They spent a week loading coal onto their ships for one of their imperial cruises around the world, and it took them a week, and it wore the crews out before they ever left. And Churchill thought there had to be something better, and there was, which was oil. So that was in 1911. Well, anyway, the next year, he converted the Navy to oil from coal using Iranian oil. And so, and I sort of marked that event as when the Middle East fate was sealed. In fact, 5 years later, the British and French conspired to break the Ottoman Empire and to control the oil states, the Sykes-Picot Agreement. And then when Iran, with its elected government, nationalized its oil industry in the early 50s, partly because they wanted to get a good accounting from what became British Petroleum. They got stonewalled, so they said, okay, we're just going to nationalize the oil industry then. And then the weakened British after World War II, they asked the United States for help, and we obliged. And it was the CIA's first big operation overthrowing a government like that. And in 1953, overthrew the government. The Dulles brothers, Secretary of State and head of the CIA, who were Rockefeller fixers their entire careers, they planned it. They designed the overthrow of Iran's government, elected government, on behalf of the oil companies. And when the dust settled, American oil companies own half of the oil there in Iran and controlled. The United States was in the driver's seat. The British became the junior partners once again, as usual. And that overthrow of the government in 1953 really led directly to what we see happening there today. So it's always about the oil. And so, the lure of oil explains everything about the industrialized world's interest in the Middle East. Everything else is a sideshow. In Noam Chomsky's The Likely Final book, which I summarized here last year, he explicitly named oil politics as an anchor in American-Israeli relations. And Noam also discussed the settler state origins of Israel and the USA. They had that in common, in which annihilating and displacing the indigenous inhabitants was an essential aspect of the process, which we see happening in Gaza today, which has been happening for a century there. Hitler actually was inspired by the settler state framework of the United States, where you invade someplace and you annihilate the natives and take their land. Yeah, Hitler actually he looked at the British Empire and the Spanish Empire. And the British Empire was trying to rule over India, which was a world away. He didn't think that worked out very well. And then he also, the Spanish Empire, he said that was, they keep interbreeding with the natives, which caused racial decay and degradation. So, the Anglo-American conquest of North America was what really inspired Hitler for his plans for Eastern Europe. Again, exterminate the natives and take their land. So I don't think there's one sane person on earth who actually has any idea about how the world works, who thinks that oil had nothing to do with what's going on in the Middle East today, including our latest attack on Iran. Yeah, it's ludicrous to think anything else. In fact, I recently had a post where I discussed the 10 nations with the world's largest oil deposits. And Venezuela ranks first, then Iran third. And then which explains everything about Trump's attacks on those nations. Yeah, everything else is noise, sideshow, obfuscation. It's irrelevant. In fact, with the ongoing attack on Iran, Trump acted like a mafia don. He made Iran leadership the offer they could not refuse. So yeah, if you refuse the so-called offer, and then then we annihilate them, wasn't much of an offer, right? So yeah. In fact, Trump's stating today that he's going to bomb Iran into becoming a democracy. I don't think even Trump believes that, and that's never happened in world history. You can't bomb another nation into becoming democratic. Usually, the opposite happens. It's all about the oil. Of course, it's all about the oil. And what Consortium News, I read this over the weekend, where when the Bushes, George Bush the first and the second, when they both attacked and invaded Iran, they at least made public cases to the American public of why they were going to do it. They were filled with lies, of course. It was all lies, but at least they made the case. Trump didn't even do that. So Trump didn't even bother to make the case for launching an attack on Iran. He did it just because. So, and I remember when Bush II invaded Iraq, there were analysts who were worldly. I remember reading this back again over 20 years ago. They basically said that Iran's next after it had been softened up enough. In fact, I remember one Israeli scholar said that Iran was crazy but didn't pursue nuclear weapons. Yeah, nuclear weapons was the only thing that it could have used to prevent an invasion by the West. So, which is what's happening today. After the 2003 invasion, which was a total catastrophe for the people of Iraq and that part of the world, when it became obvious that it was a catastrophe for the people of Iraq, I remember the 2004 election, the year after, at the Democratic Convention, Barack Obama, this is before he was even elected to be to the U.S. Senate, he actually advocated bombing Iran. And I remember he actually wrote an op-ed right after that. In fact, after he was elected, he wrote an op-ed about, yeah, we might need to bomb Iran. Again, around nuclear weapons. But, when Obama was like, I think we need to bomb Iran, that told me all I needed to know about Obama. I pretty much didn't pay attention to him ever since. It was like, just more of the same. But when he was president, he actually didn't bomb Iran. In fact, Ed Herman called Obama's decision not to bomb Iran and said negotiate a deal. It was the finest moment, arguably the finest moment of Obama's presidency. But as Noman has often stated regarding American foreign policy, it hasn't mattered who the sitting president was. Democrat, Republican, didn't matter. The empire was going to do what the empire was going to do. And whoever sat in the Oval Office, really, it didn't matter. And in fact, and I've read about this for many years, is that ever since John Kennedy was murdered and the MIC essentially took over foreign policy and all presidents became puppets, it really hasn't mattered who the president was. They're all puppets of and again, I think it's domestic interests. Again, MIC is a good one, even though there's lots of overlap between the MIC and the global elites. But the global elites I'm talking about, nobody knows who they are other than some, references to organizations such as the Mormon Financial Empire and aspects of the Jesuit order. But the rest of it, people are invisible. But they really run the global show. But as far as American foreign policy, et cetera, it's domestic interests. And the global guys know that as long as they keep free energy off the table and unimaginable, the rest kind of takes care of itself. And so I think the global elite look at what's going on today in Iran is just more of the boys that play. That's how I think they see that. But Noam actually correctly called the invasion of Iraq the crime of the 21st century so far. And yeah, I don't think there's any argument. That's the crime of the century so far. And Obama led the overthrow of Libya's government. And Libya has the 10th largest oil deposits on Earth, right? And so, yeah, in Iraq, what's Iraq, like 4th or 5th or something? But anyway, so yeah, even on the top 10 list, you can see all of them figure prominently in American foreign policy. Again, it's where the good stuff is. Again, it's the energy source that runs our industrial economies. In fact, Obama also led the overthrow of Ukraine's government, which was, again, part of a long-term plan to, again, wipe out the Russian government. In fact, Russia has the world's 8th largest oil deposits, just ahead of the United States. And so, anyway, it's all about oil. Libya, and so before Obama overthrew the Libyan government, and again, we were ultimately behind it. People talk about the British and the French, but the United States is always calling those shots. And before the invasion, Libya had the highest standard of living in Africa, ranked 53rd in the world. In 2025, it ranks 115th. And its life expectancy fell by 5 years from 2010, just before the overthrow, which is, again, that's typical for American intervention. So we destroy nations. We slaughter millions, and their life expectancies decline. This is the gift of American interventions: shorten life expectancies and just catastrophes. But it's all those resources to get a hold of. So cheap labor for the survivors. This is just the American way, and this is something that Noam as Ed and Parenti and anybody who's with a clue. This is not news. It's just standard practice. And today, though, so this weekend, I was reading all manner of pundits who weighed in on what the war in Iran really means. And Iran, like 80% of its oil is exported to China, which is the biggest, and they're China's biggest source of oil. And so, and pundits are arguing that, well, this is really, it's really an attack on China. It's really to upset China's designs on the region because they need oil too, right? So, anyways, this is at least the analysts today are actually, hey, it's about oil. In fact, 10 years after when I updated my American Empire essay in 2014, I started reading about the retrospective assessments of the war in Iraq. The invasion of Iraq. And I pretty much didn't see a pundit who discussed oil as a motivation for the United States to invade Iraq. Yeah, so it's like they can't be that stupid. But this is how ideology works. People are slavishly devoted to ideology, and it's like the most obvious thing in the world. They just can't seem to see it. Now, some of them do see it, but they know they're not supposed to talk about it. But I think a lot of them, like Noam Ed would say, they just can't see it. It's the elephant in the room that they just can't see. And so this is common. And I've seen this over and over again in my studies of elephants in rooms that the pundits and academics just can't imagine as they get trampled by them. Yeah, that blindness, I see it all the time. fact, I finished a post on the elephant. And the biggest elephant in the room is free energy. Been on the planet longer than I have been, and it's forbidden in virtually all venues on Earth. It's forbidden. And we put free energy aside, and again, my former partner Dennis Lee had the world's best heating system. It still is the world's best heating system. Been totally wiped out in North America, and in 30 years, I have never once had a robust discussion of why it's the world's best heating system. The physics isn't even exotic. It's garden variety thermodynamics. And nobody on Earth, other than me, has mustered a credible discussion in 30 years. So it's still the world's best heating system. There's a company in Portugal that makes them today. 85% savings. And try to find a conversation on Earth. There isn't one, other than me. That's it. So no wonder free energy is totally off the table. If the world's best heating system can't even have a discussion around it, yeah, free energy is way beyond the pale. And this is the biggest elephant in the room on Earth is that. And 99.999% of humanity obliges the social managers. Yeah, the greatest triumph of the global elites is making free energy in a world of abundance unimaginable. And today it pretty much is. It's almost all of humanity. This is unimaginable, even though the technologies are older than I am. Now, all of humanity's existential issues would be solved almost overnight, and usher in an unprecedented world of abundance in which every person on Earth is richer than Bill Gates is today. Just like the average American is richer than Louis XIV, who was the richest man in Europe 3 centuries ago. So, yeah, this is more of the same. And there is a free energy field, but it's in a state of arrested development, partly because of organized suppression. But the other reasons are more important. The naivete, low integrity, the obsessive focus on inventors and scientists with their theories, et cetera. And so, and again, this is why I really don't have anything to do with the field today. In fact, Brian O'Leary, soon before he died, he nicely said that the people in the field today will not be the ones who do it. They don't have it. So again, it's just an arrested development. This is what it is as we dance along the edge of the abyss today. And so what's going to happen with Iran? We'll see. We'll see. I'm reading all sorts of articles. Is this the start of World War III? Which, how to say it, 9/11, the American response to 9/11, in my opinion, was probably the beginning of World War III, which is ongoing, which is escalating, which might spell the end of humanity. And the answer, yeah, it's older than I am. Completely eliminate all this. But I have certainly not given up. And so, again, I need people who can imagine it, can't imagine reality. Yeah, so the reality of Earth, on Earth today doesn't blow them away. I'm working with people like that. I know who I'm looking for. And so it's the disillusioned idealists who have awakened from the slumber of their indoctrination and conditioning, which all societies do to their members. This is not new. It's not unique. The United States probably has the most sophisticated brainwashing system in the world. Yeah, Americans are probably the most brainwashed people in the world, but they don't think it's brainwashing. That's, again, the most effective brainwashing doesn't look like brainwashing. It looks like education, looks like the news. This is how this works. And if an effort like mine succeeds, then oil will become meaningless, as will most aspects of today's world. Yes, the world will end as we know it. Even Stephen Greer understands that, to his credit. The world will end as we know it with the arrival of free energy and related tech, like anti-gravity, which my friend was kidnapped and shown this stuff long ago. Yeah, over 30 years ago, I had a close friend, was kidnapped and shown anti-gravity, free energy, exotic tech, which is probably mostly developed by reverse engineering captured ET craft. Probably, that's my guess. But I don't really care about the ET angle too much. It's like I know the tech's real, and so that, to me, that's what matters. Its origin is not as interesting to me as it's here, and it can transform the world. And it's unimaginable. It's almost the entire planet today. And in fact, most people react with denial and fear if they even hear about it. We're the problem. And the global elites yeah, it's easy for them to manage the global situation when all humanity has got its head in the sand like it does. So, but if we can succeed, then today's geopolitics will become a relic of a bygone world. It'll be seen as this incredibly primitive ape territoriality, which it makes macabre sense in a world of scarcity and fear, but in a world of abundance, when love reigns, yeah, it makes no sense at all. It's just suicidal. It'd be suicidally stupid, and I have full confidence that everybody will easily see that. If you live in a world of abundance, why would you go do this stuff? Why would you invade nations and slaughter them, etc., when there's more than enough for everybody? Again, to live richer than Bill Gates does. So that's my game. I'm open for business and time short. So I look forward to hearing from the people that I seek. And I've certainly not given up trying to find them. So anyway, so that's all I have for today.